Welcome to the 104th commemoration of the Armenian Genocide. The date April 24th, 1915 marked the beginning of the massacres that claimed the lives of more than 1.5 million Armenians. My name is Armin McCumber, and I will be serving as one of the masters of ceremonies for today's event. My co-MC for this afternoon is Navar Beylarian, co-director of the Center for Peace, Justice, and Reconciliation at Bergen Community College and an adjunct professor of history. As he does every year, Dr. Vartan Abdo, head of the Armenian Radio Hour of New Jersey, is streaming this event live worldwide, as is Voice of America Armenia Service. We will also be streaming on Facebook and Twitter. We welcome all of you who are watching across America and throughout the world our commemoration today. We would also like to, at this time, recognize and thank Brian Ardougne, Executive Director of the Armenian Assembly of America, for serving as our official media spokesperson, and to journalist Talin Babayan for working on our press and our publicity. She has prepared press kits that can be found on the press table up front. We would also like to thank Dr. Valentin Avasanov and his son, future Dr. Alex Avasanov, for being here in case of any medical emergency. The Armenian Genocide is being memorialized and commemorated around the world, among the people as well as the conscientious leaders and governments of countries that have officially recognized the first genocide of the 20th century. France's President Macron recently declared April 24th to be a national day of commemoration for the 1915 Armenian Genocide. Vive la France! Italy also recently approved a motion to officially recognize the killings as genocide, as did the Parliament of Portugal. Currently 30 countries and 49 out of the 50 U.S. states officially recognize the Armenian Genocide. You will recall that during the centennial commemoration of the Armenian Genocide 4 years ago, under the auspices of His Holiness Karakin II, Supreme Patriarch and Catholicos of all Armenians, and His Holiness Adam I, Catholicos of the Great House of Cilicia, the Armenian Church officially recognized as saints of the Church the countless souls who perished during the genocide and witness of their Christian faith. Let us take a moment of silence to honor our martyrs, recognize saints of the Armenian Church, as well as the survivors who passed away this past year. Their absence from today's commemoration is deeply felt. A moment of silence, please. Let us also take a moment to remember the courageous Armenians, both soldiers and civilians, who continue to defend Artsakh from Azeri aggression. We shall never forget their sacrifice in the cause of self-determination and in the service of the Armenian people. Again, let us never forget that Artsakh is Armenia. A moment of silence for their sacrifice. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Please remain standing. I am pleased to introduce Astrigner Vocal Ensemble of Brooklyn Armenian School, led by Maria Sahakyan. They will sing the American and the Armenian national anthems. Astrigner Vocal Ensemble.
Bright star
thank you to the Astrigner Vocal Ensemble of the Brooklyn Armenian School, led by Maria Sahakian. It is my honor to invite to the podium His Eminence Archbishop Anushavan Tanelian, Prelate of the Eastern Prelacy of the Armenian Apostolic Church of America, for the invocation.
Hanun hor, yevok tvo, yevok winser po, amen. Almighty and ever-living God, creator of the world, Father of all men and women, we stand here before you at the crossroads of the world on yet another April, the month of life, when the earth blossomed forth, renewing again the promise of life. Yet it is a month of sadness for your faithful children, the people of Ararat, who resonate the words of the poet that April is the cruelest month. No nation can remain the same after it has endured the terror and suffering of genocide. Memories open the deep wounds that have rooted in the collective memory of a nation. The wounds can heal only through the contrite repentance of the perpetrator, who is willing to make amends to heal the grievous wounds. For 104 years, we have lived with the memory of the genocide, and the wounds became deeper because the perpetrator denied and still continues to deny the dastardly deed. Thus, the denial of genocide for 104 years became a continuing genocide for the Armenian nation. The survivors who came to America were filled with the hope, not so much for themselves, but for their children and grandchildren. It can be said that the Armenians, having survived death, moved into the light of resurrection and have contributed their share as a people to the cultural treasure chest of civilization. All merciful Lord, we seek the intercession of our precious holy martyr saints of the Armenian genocide to bless this gathering and all those in attendance. Lord and Savior, genocide can happen anywhere and any time. We ask that you remember the victims of all genocides, past and present. Bless all those who sacrificed their lives in faithful obedience to you. Strengthen in us the power of the cross, the spirit of living martyrdom, so that we may fulfill your holy commandments through such life and service that are instruments for your peace and justice in this earth's struggle for freedom and human rights, which are your gifts to all your creatures. Hear the supplication of your servants and accept our prayers. Make us worthy to thankfully glorify you, together with your Son and with your Holy Spirit, now and always and forever and ever. Der Uriah as knatzes mer I janabares charagutyan, der Uriah yevarachnokt ya hokvots merots, yevaminen havadatselots, knal hak tarutyan janabares, yevigyansen havidenits. Amen.
Thank you, Your Eminence. Please now welcome to the podium Zaven Kanjian, who's the Executive Director of the Armenian Missionary Association of America. He's a graduate of the American University of Beirut in Business Administration and has held leadership posts in numerous organizations, including Armenia Fund, the Armenian Evangelical Union of North America, and the Salvation Army of Glendale. He has contributed volumes of bilingual articles to American Armenian media and is the author of 3 Armenian books. Please welcome him for some remarks and a prayer.
I shall fear no evil. I shall fear no evil, for you are with me, says the psalmist. But Gerguzek, Ahavasik. Baruch sevag anlăreli zankagadun. Խոսեցին ու չնչեցին, հադեցին հաստ ու պարագ, հոշեցին ու դանչեցին, փշրեցին դվին գրագ, վատեցին արյուն արցունք, ներգեցին ծոր ու բարձունք, քանթեցին երգիր մի լուրդ, մորթեցին մի ժողովուրդ, հացարad մի ողջ աշխարհ, սարքեցին փշրանք նշխար, Սուրբ նշխար շան պերանում, ուզեցին մի հայ թողուլ և այն էլ թանկարանում, Karuna ծունա արել. The plan was to save one soul condemned to a museum wall. Well, thank God, we are not in a museum. We are here today by the grace of God, who through the goodwill of good Samaritans saved tens of thousands of orphans and widows, driven to extinction in the treacherous Syrian desert or on their way to their Golgotha in Deir Zor. Unsung heroes who sacrificed their lives to save the remnants of an indigenous people, uprooted from a homeland where their forebears were graced to call home for over 4 millennia. Heroes who placed righteousness or the faith they professed above the shame of adherence to the orders of a heinous Ottoman government set to annihilate a race in a genocidal crime against humanity. Failing the plan, more survivors had secured a place in world museums. On the eastern front of our historic homeland, we also saw the merciful hand of God. In 1918, remnants of the survivors, having their back to the wall of annihilation, fought the most ferocious and heroic battles against battalions of regular army regiments. Holding back no sacrifice and brevity, they won the battle of survival, creating the first independent republic in the history of our nation in many, many centuries. Friends, the museums of the world were getting tight for the survivors. Today, as we commemorate the 104th anniversary of the genocide, we witness another form of independence in the homeland. Independence of the mind and soul to a fetterless horizon of creativity, dignity, and the pursuit of happiness. Independence that tends to shatter the barriers of social, judicial, and democratic inequalities. Independence that will anchor the faith and the conviction that the homeland equally belongs to all, where citizens equitably share rights and responsibilities, collectively soaring towards a promised future that will bring prosperity to the land and happiness to its people. We reckon that our challenges have not disappeared. From the existential threat looming on the border of Artsakh, to the perpetrators' continued self-imposed coma of denial, to the lack of progress on the front of reparations and restitution, and the absence of punitive potency in the slowly expanding wave of recognition, we have a long way to go. Meanwhile, we're set to pursue priorities in developing a strong and modern society that will defend the homeland, plow new economic frontiers, keep the faith ablaze, respect tradition while innovating culture, rear generations of alert, accomplished, creative, and responsible youth with a strong sense of belonging. As we vow never to forget the grief of our fathers and the pillaged ancestral homeland, we eye a crimson future that will bring joy to our children, prosperity to the nation, and peace to the land where the biblical Noah's Ark rested. As for the museums, we will eternally confine crime to its walls, never to experience it again. As we echo once again Baruch Sevag, we are, we shall be, and become many. Եվ ինչու պիտի չհբարդանանք, գանք, պիտի լինենք, ու թեր շադանանք։
Our theme today is truth, recognition, and justice. Genocide is not a crime against the innocent men, women, and children of the targeted race or ethnicity. It is an international crime, a crime so horrific as to constitute a crime against humanity. When one genocide is denied, all genocides are denied. We must all stand together in condemnation of the perpetrators, wherever, whenever that crime occurs. Thus, we join our brothers and sisters of other nationalities who share the devastating distinction of international destruction, genocide. Today, we demand together, never again. Never again. We want to say thank you, America, for raising the alarm to the world through the eyewitness accounts of the American ambassador to Turkey, Henry Morgenthau, and countless consuls and missionaries stationed throughout the Ottoman Empire. To the communities in the United States, under the auspices of the Near East Relief Foundation, who launched the first civic philanthropic movement to help refugees, many of them orphaned Armenian children. Most of us here today are here because we are descendants of those orphans. We say thank you to American presidents Woodrow Wilson and Calvin Coolidge, who supported the Near East relief efforts. And a particular thank you to the late President Ronald Reagan, who in a statement issued on April 22nd, 1981, referred to the Armenian genocide. Yes, genocide. Thank you, America, for taking us in, for giving us fertile soil in which to heal, raise our families, educate our children, reconstitute our lost and broken communities, and imagine a future as glorious as our Armenian past. With your support, America, we have survived and we continue to thrive.
Our first guest speaker is no stranger to this stage. The son of an immigrant family from Cuba, New Jersey's senior senator Robert Menendez was elected to the House of Representatives in 1992, where he served the people of New Jersey's 13th congressional district for 14 years. He has now served in the United States Senate for the last 13 years. During his many years in public service, Senator Menendez has been a great friend to our community. Once again, as he does every single year, as a member of the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Menendez introduced Senate Resolution 150 that calls upon Turkey and our own government to fully recognize the Armenian genocide. And it was less than 1 month ago, during an exchange and a confirmation hearing for Ambassador to Turkey designate David Satterfield, that Senator Menendez forcefully rebuked, in a way that only Bob Menendez can do, forcefully rebuked the nominee for failing to properly refer to the 1915 to 23 Armenian atrocities as genocide. Yeah, I hope everyone had a chance to see that exchange. Please welcome our friend, the senior senator from the great state of New Jersey, to the stage, Bob Menendez.
Thank you, Senator.
Good afternoon, Your Eminence, Reverend clergy, to all the distinguished guests, to my colleague, Congressman Pallone, who's here with us as well. Today we come together once again in remembrance, in reflection, and in solidarity. Nearly 104 years ago, in the waning years of the Ottoman Empire, Turkish authorities began a systemic campaign to exterminate the Armenian population through killings, starvation, forced deportation, and untold brutality. Such intentional, horrific violence targeted towards one people has a name, and one name only, and that name is genocide, the Armenian Genocide. Every April, we come together to call the crimes committed against the Armenian people by its rightful name. Together, we not only remember the 1.5 million victims for the way in which they died, we also reflect on the way in which they lived, for their contributions to Armenian history and culture live on today, and there can be no denying them. Today we stand in the unshakable support of the truth. Now, these days it seems as though the acceptance of basic truth is increasingly treated as optional. But the Armenian people know this denialism all too well. For years now, the government of Turkey has spent countless millions of dollars on lobbyists willing to trumpet lies and make excuses for the atrocities that its predecessors committed. Portraying the extermination of 1.5 million Armenians as nothing more than the consequence of World War I is a distortion of history at best, and at worst, a contrived excuse for an unthinkable crime against humanity. Portraying death by genocide as no different from any other death that occurred at that time is a distortion of history and a callous reaction to human suffering. To this day, the Turkish state continues to undermine the fundamental right of free speech in Turkey and abroad. That is essential for both studying the past and informing the present. The Turkish government and its extremist sympathizers have advocated for restrictive laws on expression and against legislation that recognizes the Armenian genocide. They've initiated prosecutions and smear campaigns against historians who study the Turks' treatment of the Armenian community. And they've even resorted to violence and harassment against journalists and activists who bravely speak the truth. Such actions are reprehensible, and they speak volumes of both about the crime and the cover-up. Fortunately, there are countless voices, many of whom are here today, who have spoken up and stymied Turkey's effort to diminish the Armenian genocide. We refuse to see the truth suppressed, the facts denied, and history revised. We will never, ever forget the Armenian genocide for what it was. Because, as we know, we cannot learn from our history if we do not study our history. That's why throughout my career in the House and Senate, I have pushed relentlessly for an honest accounting of the truth and pressed officials at every level of the United States government to do the same. In every session of Congress since 2006, I have introduced resolutions affirming the facts of the Armenian genocide. When I was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I was proud to preside over the first ever passage of an Armenian genocide resolution through the United States Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And today, as the ranking Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee, I have introduced the Armenian genocide resolution again in a bipartisan fashion with my Republican colleague, Senator Ted Cruz. All told, we have 15 co-sponsors that we are building upon, including several on the Foreign Relations Committee who share my commitment to its passage. And we will not rest, not only till it passes the committee, but passes the Senate. But until that day, that it becomes the official policy of the United States government to recognize the Armenian genocide here and any place else in the world. I have also, as has been mentioned, scrutinized ambassadorial nominees to Armenia and to Turkey. On 2 occasions, I have held up nominees with problematic views on genocide, and in one case several years ago, I forced one of them to withdraw their nomination. But let me be clear. These actions have never been partisan. I have pushed both Democratic and Republican presidential administrations alike, because as you all know, the basic truth that 1.5 million Armenians lost their lives is not a partisan issue. Indeed, our own U.S. diplomat who served in the region at the time documented the Armenian genocide and witnessed the Turkish authorities' violent campaign firsthand. Our ambassador to the Ottoman Empire at the time, Henry Morgenthau, described the Turkish authorities' deportation orders for Armenians as a death warrant to a whole race that the Turks made no particular attempt to conceal. And today's diplomats of the United States should not be any less frank when they engage the Turkish government. That's why we hold nominees who appear before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and demand that they stand by these historic State Department cables on the Armenian genocide. In my book, if they cannot commit themselves to the truth, then they have no business representing the United States of America abroad. We cannot turn our backs on the victims of the Armenian genocide or any other genocide, no matter where it happens, no matter when it happens, no matter who perpetrates it. Our foreign policy must reflect an honest accounting of crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. We must commit ourselves to working for the day when the Armenian genocide is recognized by all as an irrefutable fact, and the day in which such evil has no home in this world. Together, we will stand up against those who believe that genocide is a legitimate weapon of war. We'll stand up for fundamental human rights. We'll stand up for the truth. And only with the truth, when it prevails, will we remember that the words never again mean never again, because we will never, ever, never, ever, never, ever forget.
Thank you, Senator. Our next speaker, who has just arrived, is also no stranger to the Armenian people. For nearly 40 years, New York's senior Senator Chuck Schumer, who is the Senate Minority Leader, has been a leader on national issues and a tireless advocate for New Yorkers. From protecting Social Security and Medicare to encouraging job-creating infrastructure projects, Senator Schumer protects the middle class and those working to reach it. Senator Schumer, who is a longtime friend of one of the co-founders of this event, Mr. Sam Azadian, and indeed of the entire Armenian American community throughout his career in public service in the New York Assembly, as a member of Congress, and now in the United States Senate. Once again, he co-sponsored Senate Resolution 150 that calls upon Turkey and our own government to fully recognize the Armenian genocide. Please join me in a warm welcome. Welcome to the podium, the Honorable Senator, our good friend, Chuck Schumer.
Got the right tie and shirt on. You're the man. You too, Frank. Well, Parev. It is great to be here once again. You know I never miss. And that's because I know how important this is. But I want to say something I haven't said before. I love the Armenian people. They are such a good, fine, wonderful people. And maybe you always work hard, don't ask for much for yourselves, and you have real compassion for others. And I think that may be because of the Metzjägern, that you know what it's like to suffer and you have sympathy for others who are in that position. But I salute the Armenian people, and the more Armenians there are in America, the better America will be. Now, let me just say this. I would like to first take a moment to remember the victims of the genocide and their descendants. I just met a young woman. She's a leader in one of our New England states. I met her because she's thinking of running for the Senate. Her great-grandparents were slaughtered in the genocide, and only through a relief agency did her grandparents, who didn't know each other then, get to America. She told me the whole story about them. And these stories we hear over and over and over again. And yet, the Turks and too many of their allies have the nerve to want to make us forget and lie about the genocide that was perpetrated on the Armenian people. And I say, never will we forget. Never, never, never. We owe it, of course, to the Armenian nation, but we also owe it to all of humanity and to ourselves to call out evil when we see it. A genocide that's not properly defined and remembered will certainly lead to another. And you know, of course, what Hitler said when he was thinking, and then unfortunately succeeded far too brutally to kill the Jewish people. No one remembered the Armenian genocide. That is a lesson not just for the Jewish people, that is a lesson for the people of the world. Because remember, it could be your people next. There are evil people in the world. They want to hurt innocent people for their own ideological and nasty ways. And if those people believe they can get away with it, they will do it. They will do it, as brutal as it is. And so we have a moral obligation to always remember one of the most evil undertakings in the history of mankind, the horrible Armenian genocide, Metzjägern. And we will never forget it. We also want to say that I am disappointed that so many of our leaders in the White House, Republican and Democrat, not partisan, have not stepped up to remember the genocide. They say it's politics. They say, well, we don't want to alienate Turkey. I say, when there is something as moral and as important as commemorating those who were brutally killed, 1.5 million people, there should be no politics. We should all stand together and remember the genocide and remember what the Armenian people went through. The one thing we can say now is this. Despite the evil perpetrated on the Armenian people, so many were able to come to America. There are now 1.5 million Armenians living here in America, people of Armenian ancestry. They go from Bayside to Los Angeles. We prefer you come to Bayside. If you can't make it all the way to Bayside, at least go to New Jersey, not California. But you are here. The Armenian nation has not just endured, but it has prevailed. The three pashas are gone, the Ottoman Empire is gone, and the Armenian people live on and continue to inspire the world. A year ago, the whole world cheered as thousands of Armenians took courageously to the streets of Yerevan and rallied for democracy. The protests were not led by the people of the older generation. It was led by the students, which shows you that this memory will live on. The youngest generation who are taking control of their country's destiny, working together to build even a brighter future, and remembering, as they do, and their children and their grandchildren will. So today, we stand here despite the evil done to the Armenian people. We stand here proudly, proud of this Armenian nation, proud of the Armenian American community, and we say with great pride in our heart, we loudly proclaim, Ketze Hayastan, Ketze Hayastan, Ketze Hayastan, Ketze Hayastan. God bless you.
Thank you, Senator Schumer. Let's hear a round of applause for Senator Schumer. Thank you for your unending support of the Armenian people. And now from across the river to my home state of New Jersey, I'd like to introduce Congressman Frank Pallone. As founder of the Congressional Caucus on Armenian Issues, Congressman Pallone has coordinated the efforts of this diverse, bipartisan coalition to help foster greater ties between the United States and Armenia. Over the past quarter century, Congressman Pallone has sponsored and supported every single piece of legislation of importance to the Armenian American community, where it is focused on genocide recognition or aid to Armenia. He recently sponsored House Resolution 296, which calls for the United States federal government to recognize and commemorate the Armenian Genocide. We are extremely fortunate, and I am fortunate because my daughter will be interning in D.C. in the Congressman's office this summer. Thank you, Congressman. We are extremely fortunate to have the steadfast support of such a distinguished representative. Please welcome New Jersey's Congressman Frank Pallone to the podium. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to thank the Knights and the Daughters of Vartan and all of you for being here today for genocide recognition, and also for your support of the Republic of Armenia and Artsakh. And as you know, many of you have worked very hard over the years to get your congressmen and women and your senators to join our Armenia caucus. We have one of our caucus members that just joined us today, Carolyn Maloney. I also want to pay tribute to the steadfast support over the years of Senator Schumer and my own Senator Bob Menendez, who's always been out there for all the Armenian causes. Now let me say this. We know that we need to have the United States Congress pass the genocide resolution, and one of the purposes of our Armenia caucus is to try to continue to make sure that happens. And I pledge to you again that we will continue to push for the recognition resolution to come forward, because we know there's been tremendous progress by so many other countries. Almost every state and so many countries have recognized the Armenian genocide in the last 10 or 20 years, but the United States has not. And because we have not, we still see those in Turkey. Most recently, President Ardougne, if you remember, denied the genocide just a few days ago, just a few weeks ago. And part of the reason for that is because here in the United States and elsewhere, we still do not recognize the genocide and demand that Turkey recognize it and pay reparations at the same time. So we will continue in our efforts in genocide recognition. But I also want to take a page from what Senator Schumer said about progress in Armenia. It is important that we continue to support the Republic of Armenia. Think about the fact that during the Velvet Revolution last year, Armenia was one of the few former Soviet republics that actually moved towards democracy. Armenia moves towards democracy every day. Armenia moves towards a market economy every day, while so many other of the former Soviet republics, and obviously Russia itself, have moved in the opposite direction, as has Turkey. So I think it's very important for us in Congress not only to be supportive of help for Armenia economically and for security reasons, but also to recognize that this is a very small country that has become more and more the example for democracy around the world, and particularly with the former Soviet republics. So we now are in the process of putting together a resolution in Congress that we hope will recognize that fact and get passed. In addition to that, we have to be supportive of Artsakh. We need to have a settlement in Artsakh that keeps Artsakh Armenian, whether it's joining the Republic of Armenia or as a separate state. And as you know, many times in our Congress, not our Congress, but our State Department, again over several with several presidents on a bipartisan basis, continues to deny people who want to go to Artsakh and have any communications with Artsakh. So within our caucus, we have another bill that's moving now that will demand that our State Department allow communications and allow people to go to Artsakh and ultimately recognize Artsakh as an independent democratic country as well. There are two Armenias now, and we must recognize Artsakh as well. But I just want to thank all of you, because without your help, we could not have an Armenia caucus. Without your help, we wouldn't see more and more countries around the world in almost every state recognizing the Armenian genocide. And I know that if you continue to be supportive, if we continue to have rallies like this and continue to draw attention the importance of the U.S.-Armenia relationship, that we will see the day in the Congress when we will recognize the genocide against the Armenian people, and we will be more supportive of Armenia even than we are now. So please, please, understand how important it is for you to be here today. Understand how important it is for all of you to continue to support your Armenian advocates and your Armenian organizations like the Knights and Daughters of Vartan, because without your help, we would not be able to make progress on the things that you care so much about. Thank you again.
Thank you, Congressman Pallone. Our next speaker is one of the most distinguished public servants in the country. Representing New York's 12th congressional district since 1993, Congressman Carolyn Maloney is a national leader with extensive accomplishments on security, financial services, the economy, and women's issues. She is a longtime member of the Congressional Caucus on Armenian Issues and consistently co-sponsors Armenian genocide recognition resolutions, as she did again this year. She's here every year, rain or shine. Please join me in welcoming the dynamic Congressman from New York, our longtime friend, Carolyn Maloney, to the podium today.
Thank you.
Most distinguished. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, let me get this.
Okay.
You have to speak right into it otherwise.
Thank you so much. I'm wearing this fireman's jacket to remember that we have to take care of the health care and victims compensation fund for the first responders in our, and that's a legislation that I'm sponsoring, but we have to remember the Armenians, and we have to get official recognition in the United States Congress. I want to recognize the religious leaders here, Your Eminence, and to remember that it is the Armenian Church that is the oldest Christian church on this planet. What a legacy, what a responsibility, what an honor to join you in remembering, and to join my colleagues, Senator Schumer and Menendez, and Frank Pallone, who is a tireless leader in the United States Congress as the leader and the founder of the Caucus on Armenian Issues. He is steadfast, he is always there, and he always makes sure that it's one of the first bills introduced in Congress to remember the inhumanity of the Armenian genocide 103 years ago. Each year we mourn the 1.5 million Armenians that were murdered by the government that was supposed to protect them, and we must honor their memory each and every year. We must come to the day when Erdogan recognizes the genocide instead of denying it. Now, if one denies the genocide, it doesn't mean that they don't know the facts. Believe me, he knows the facts, but he's still denying. And we must have America join the growing chorus of voices across the globe calling on governments to recognize the genocide and the calculated elimination of an entire population. In 1915, members of the international community, including U.S. Ambassador Henry Morgenthau, recognized the mass extermination of the Armenian people as a crime against humanity. And it is important that more than 100 years later, the Turkish and American governments do the same. I am proud to sponsor House Resolution 296, which would recognize the systemic plan to extinguish an ancient and dignified and accomplished people. We must learn from this and other genocides so that we can prevent each tragedy from occurring ever again. We must teach ourselves and our children about the abuses of state power that allowed those who created these crimes to go unpunished. We must teach ourselves and our children about this genocide if we have any hope of preventing such tragedies from happening again. And I will not stop in fighting for recognition of the Armenian genocide by our government, as well as the Turkish government. We are here today because we have not forgotten. And on this solemn remembrance of the Yetzigan, the great crime, our message remains united and clear. The United States and Turkish governments must formally acknowledge the terrible genocide that occurred 104 years ago. I am with you. We'll keep fighting. We'll keep pushing. We have a Democratic majority now. Maybe we can pass it in this Congress. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. This event is sponsored and organized each year by the Knights of Vartan, an Armenian fraternal organization dedicated to serving the well-being of the Armenian people, and the Daughters of Vartan, who share that objective, along with the participation and support of numerous Armenian organizations which will be recognized later. I am very honored to invite the Grand Commander of the Knights of Vartan, Dr. Gary Zamanigian, as well as the Grand Matron of the Daughters of Vartan, Diana Tugmanian, to the podium to speak to you right now.
In 1915, the serpent was in our garden, and the world did not take time to do anything about the plight of the Armenian people. We must be ever vigilant, because the same serpent is ready to reappear, trespass, and share its poisonous venom once again as if time stood still. For decades, our adversary has attempted to complete the task begun in 1915 by pouring millions of dollars in a campaign, this time using the pen rather than the sword, to whitewash the atrocities of 1915. Fortunately, there have been credible scholars who have, through their meticulous research, provided undeniable proof that the intent of the Young Turks was to exterminate the Armenian people. Adding insult to injury, the civilized world turns a blind eye to the continuing crimes of the Turkish government. It is not enough that Ottoman Turkey destroyed our historic homeland, sending the population to Der Zor. In recent years, the government of Turkey has returned to the same location with a denialist zeal to wipe out the last traces of our sanctified martyrs. They have invaded Der Zor once again to crush and destroy the bones of our ancestors, to wipe out the remaining relics of testimony relating to the death march and tragic destiny of 1.5 million Armenians in 1915. Today, Armenians around the world must seize the moment so that any attempt at social, cultural, and historic genocide does not occur again. With the past as our teacher, we learned quickly that we have to defend ourselves, our land, our cherished Christian faith, and our treasured traditions. The Armenian martyrs of 1915 will not have died in vain if we work together to assure a strong, democratic, free and independent homeland for the Armenian people.
Speak very close to the microphone, okay? Because it doesn't pick it up unless you're very close to it.
Reverend clergy, honored guests, leaders of the Times Square Commemoration Committee, Grand Commander Dr. Gary Zemamigian, brothers and sisters of the Knights and Daughters of Ardougne. As the granddaughter of survivors of the genocide, I am glad to be here today to commemorate the genocide of the 20th century. I salute all of you and your ancestors whose mortal lives were sacrificed for all of us to be free Armenians, that so we may pass on for generations our Christian faith, culture, heritage, and our brave history. The voice of our ancestors and our 1.5 million martyrs, now our saints, need to be heard. We are here to demand justice for those that are innocent and were brutally murdered. Armenians were not a threat. They were kind, warm-hearted, intelligent, successful. As a minority, they practiced Christianity and their faith. Genocide is a permanent and systematic campaign to exterminate the entire race. The Ottoman Empire took their opportunity to eliminate the Armenian race. We stand together declaring the truth of the Armenian genocide. We must continue to make our voices heard today, tomorrow, and as long as it takes for justice to take place. We cannot give up our pursuit for demanding justice. Otherwise, we will be forsaking those who lost their lives so that our race could continue. We need to continue to honor our ancestors, demanding justice. Those who once unheard voices, our once unheard history, we must remember them so we can sing the song of victory. We praise to God that genocide shall never be tolerated again, and that is our victory. Some of our voices have been heard and our demands have been met, but we need all our voices heard and all our demands met. That day will come. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in our future, that will be our voices, and our voices will be heard. Thank you.
I would like to call my co-MC, Armin McCumber, to the podium, please. Armin.
Come on. This is silly.
Many of you who have been here year after year recognize Armin because he has served valiantly in rain, in shine, in cold, in heat. He has been emceeing this prestigious event for 10 years. This is his 10th anniversary. Can we hear a round of applause for my esteemed colleague, Mr. Armin McCumber? You want to say something? Oh,
Armen has been doing this for the past 10 years and plus years, and we are grateful to him. This is a small way of appreciation. We have the certificate and this Knights of Vartan medal that he deserves more than this, but we honor his commitment and dedication. Come here, they're going to take a picture. And then
You want to say a couple of, just say a little thank you.
I thank. This man does all the work. Everybody does all the work. I show up and I read. But thank you.
Now representing the Armenian National Committee of America, Ken Hachikyan is an economist and public activist who has been active in the Armenian American community, having held several leadership positions, including national chairman of the Armenian Youth Federation. In 2001, he became the chairman of the Armenian National Committee of America, the largest Armenian American advocacy organization in the United States, where he served until 2016. Since then, he has been the chairman of the Armenian Legal Center for Justice and Human Rights, which seeks reparations from Turkey and others for the crimes of the Armenian Genocide through international legal venues. Please welcome Mr. Ken Hachikyan.
Reverend clergy, knights and daughters of Vartan, honored guests and friends. We must today declare the unabashed truth, not only for the sake of truth, for that is already written upon each of our hearts, known virtually unanimously to scholars of history as well as to religious and government leaders worldwide, but truth in the service of justice. Justice not only for the lost, but for the living, for generations yet unborn, for aspirations yet unrealized. Justice that delivers ironclad security, that serves Armenia's long-term survival, that ensures Armenia's place at the table of nations, that protects, in a word, Armenia's future. And that justice must start with unambiguously breaking the back of Turkey's denials, Ankara's century-long obstruction of justice for the Armenian genocide, the longest, largest criminal cover-up in world history. Years of U.S. futile efforts to appease Turkey have failed miserably. Yerevan's attempts to meet Ankara halfway have clearly failed as well. It was here in this city a decade ago that we together forcefully challenged the Turkish-Armenian protocols. There were some then who defended this defeatist surrender of Armenian rights. We did not. There are none today who doubt that the Armenian genocide is a crime to be punished, not, as Ankara would like us to believe, a conflict to be solved. Even as we speak today, Ankara continues to consolidate its hold on the genocidal gains of its crimes against the Armenian people, obstructing justice, blocking the return of the Armenian nation of key elements, indispensable elements of viability that long sustained the Armenian people on our ancient homeland. This crime must end. It must end in Washington, and then it must end in Ankara. Justice must be served now. After years of failed efforts to appease Ankara, it's time for President Trump and the U.S. Congress, in President Trump's own words, to put America first. The days of Turkey first are over. Erdogan has made sure of that with his dictatorial policies of denial, censorship, intolerance, and brutality. Policies he is also attempting to inflict upon the Christians in Syria. No nation, especially an anti-American dictatorship, which chooses to curry favor with America's enemies, deserves a veto on American remembrance of genocide. It's time for us to shamefully stop outsourcing America's genocide recognition policy to the despots in Ankara. It's time to reject, once and for all, Turkey's blackmail, its gag rule against honest U.S. remembrance of Armenian genocide. It's time to put America on the right side of history, the right side of truth, the right side of justice and reparations, and ultimately the right side of Armenia's security and survival. I commit to you that with your help, we will persevere in our fight for justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Dr. Varinak Tarpinyan is a practicing physician in family medicine for over 35 years. Today, he represents the Armenian Democratic Liberal Ramgavar Party. Please welcome Dr. Varinak Tarpinyan, who has been a member of the ADL since 1984.
Your Eminence, Archbishop Anushavan Tanyelian, most reverend clergymen, honorable sponsors and guests, beloved compatriots, dear ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Armenian Democratic Liberal Ramgavar Party, I salute you. Any impartial historian would want to know the answer to why 1.5 out of 2 million indigenous people would move away from their historic homeland where they lived for centuries before Turkey even existed. The inevitable answer they would ultimately uncover is that these people were uprooted and subjected to one of the most systematic and atrocious treatment the world has seen, with gross violation of humanitarian principles. Charles Aznavour, in his song, "They Fell," said, and I quote, "They fell that year, they vanished from the earth, in their God still believing, never knowing the cause or what laws they'd offended. Their only crime was life, their only guilt was being, nothing more, nothing less." More than 100 years have passed for the genocide. New generations have emerged and have been enduring the burden of injustice. The historian David Herbert Donald, professor of history at Harvard, raised the question of relevance of historic events to any current generation. This in mind, we ask, how pertinent is our history, and in particular the Armenian genocide? If we are serious about security of Armenia, its economic development, improved infrastructure, health, stronger institutions, and innovative pursuits, then the relevance becomes so apparent to each and every one of us here and around the world today. By remembering and commemorating our martyrs, we are sending a very clear message, a message that we do and will remember them, unrelenting in our pursuit of recognition, accountability, and reparation by those parties responsible. The unpunished and unrecognized Armenian genocide has served as a model for following genocides to happen. We will continue working with all pertinent international bodies for the prevention of future atrocities in many places of the world. In case we are thinking that we are out of the woods, think again. The reality indicates that we are physically surrounded by hate and the threat of recurrence. We are served by political lip servicing that do nothing else but distract us from our objectives. Therefore, I urge all young Armenian leaders, lawyers, professionals across the diaspora to continue galvanizing and work towards preparing appropriate documentation for our valid claim to the International Court of Justice. Our martyrs need you, and the national Armenian credibility and legacy we leave behind for our future generations depend on it. Only prosperous and just Armenia will lead the way. Let's not undermine the Velvet Revolution by just giving ideas or thinking we can do better. Let's be part of the success story behind it. And for once, let's depend on our own resources and talents. Dear fellow Armenians, heads of organizations, bodies of all denominations, let us continue to work together, egos and self-interest aside, towards a strong, prosperous, and united Armenia. And finally, վերջապես, կալդարի դեսնվինք ամբողջական ձովեձով Հայաստանի մեջ։
Thank you, Doctor. Representing the Armenian General Benevolent Union, Christina Lalama is a proud third-generation Armenian American. Born and raised on Long Island, and like many wonderful Armenians, Christina spent her summers at AGBU Camp Nubar, where she nurtured her Armenian identity. She has worked at the AGBU for 5 years, currently as AGBU's Alumni Relations Coordinator, managing the growing network of AGBU program alumni. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage.
Your Eminence, Reverend clergy, honored guests, knights and daughters of Vartan, and my fellow Armenians. It is with great pride that AGBU stands with you all today to demand justice for the human rights violation of the Armenian genocide committed 104 years ago. In that time, for over a century, Armenians have kept alive the spirit of the 1.5 million blessed martyrs that were massacred in 1915. Each of us sitting here today, Armenian or not, can say with certainty that those deaths were not in vain. That spirit is alive and vibrant today in all of our diasporan communities across the world, and most tangibly, their spirit is alive in our rightful nations of Armenia and of Artsakh. Armenians have an unshakable resilience, something that's guided us throughout our centuries-old history. And it's that very same resilience that allows us to enrich our unique culture, to strengthen our faith, and to guide Armenians to success in all walks of life. Because of that spirit, again, I say, we stand here today, together, to demand recognition of the Armenian genocide by Turkey and by other world leaders. Because sadly, the world we live in today isn't much different from the world of 1915. Back then, the discourse was hate. Fear of the other was ever present. And world leaders denied undeniable facts as a tool to wield power. So because we find ourselves in such a world today, we as Armenians have a responsibility. We have a responsibility not only to ourselves and to our Armenian communities, but to humanity. Our responsibility today is to ensure that genocide never happens again, not anywhere in the world and not on our watch. Because as Armenians, we know what happens. We know the pain that is caused by genocide. We know the trauma of unhealed wounds that passes down from generation to generation. And as Armenians, we also know how to rise up and to overcome. So I stand before you today, a third-generation Armenian American, and I'm only half Armenian by blood. But I'm reminded of the words of Vahan Tekeyan, Partratsir Partratsur. Rise up and raise others with you. For 104 years, we have risen. Now it is our responsibility to raise others with us, and not only other Armenians, but survivors of all other genocides. Yes, it is our responsibility as Armenians to stand up with them and to also demand justice for them. In addition to honoring Armenian genocide martyrs, let's honor the martyrs of all survivors of genocide. The Armenian genocide is our genocide. The Holocaust is our genocide. The Rwandan genocide is our genocide. The Serbian, Somalian, Cambodian, Darfur genocides are our genocides. Because as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. so rightly preached, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So to the young Armenians here today in the crowd, including the talented and wonderful students of Holy Martyrs and Hovnanian and Brooklyn schools, let's give it up for them. And even my niece, Mia, who is only 4 months old. She is 1/4 Armenian by blood, and she is a proud 4th-generation Armenian American. To all of you, AGBU hopes that you hear this message. As you grow and define what it means to be Armenian for your generation, remember this: our truth and the truth of our ancestors. Whoa. Our truth, remember this, not that sound. Our truth and the truth of our ancestors is truth with a capital T. It is undeniable and it is accounted for. And remember that part of your responsibility as Armenians is to infuse your Armenian identity with love and compassion for the other, and with unwavering support for other genocide survivors. So that when it's your turn to stand here at the podium, at the crossroads of the world, you show the world that Armenians are an example of strength. We are an example of rising up and of raising others. And make sure you let the world know that the Armenian people have done all they can to ensure that genocide never happens again. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Beautifully said. Brian Ardougne is the Executive Director of the Armenian Assembly of America, where he has spearheaded efforts and rallied congressional and community support for the Armenian Genocide Resolution. Ardougne has also served as legislative counsel to former Congressman Michael Bilirakis, Vice Chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee, where he handled numerous legislative issues. Thank you for coming from Washington, D.C. Please welcome Brian Ardougne.
Good afternoon. All right. Are we ready? All right. U.S. Ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, Henry Morgenthau, described what happened to the Armenian people as a campaign of race extermination. At the direction of President Woodrow Wilson, Major General James Harbord, who served as General John Pershing's chief of staff during World War I, led an American military mission to Armenia in 1919. General Harbord reported from the USS Martha Washington that what happened to the Armenian people was the most colossal crime of all the ages. President Theodore Roosevelt wrote that what happened to the Armenian people was the greatest crime of the war, and failure to act against Turkey is to condone it. The Allied powers charged Turkey with crimes against humanity and civilization. Germany, Turkey's closest ally in World War I, has affirmed the Armenian genocide. Raphael Lemkin, who survived the Holocaust and coined the term genocide, stated that what happened to the Armenian people was a prototype of genocide. The International Association of Genocide Scholars, the preeminent authority on the subject matter, has repeatedly and unequivocally stated that what happened to the Armenian people was genocide. Now, fast forward to this April, wherein Turkey's authoritarian leader said that relocating Armenians in 1915 was reasonable. Reasonable? Let's be clear. The mass deportation of an entire race is never reasonable, not 104 years ago and not today. Reasonable? This is genocide denial at its worst. It is unacceptable and downright dangerous. We heard from our congressional leaders today about the genocide resolutions pending in the House and Senate. It is said that genocide denial is a double killing. I say, let's have a different kind of double this year. Let's ensure that both bills are passed by Congress, and together we can end the longest campaign of genocide denial in history. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Representing the Armenian Bar Association, attorney Gerard Kasabian currently serves as chairman of the Board of Governors of the Armenian Bar Association. Mr. Kasabian is an accomplished attorney based in California with diverse experience in transaction and litigation matters, representing high net worth families with respect to their trusts and estates, family law, real estate, and business law matters. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Kasabian to the stage.
Thank you. Reverend clergy, honorable guests, Sireli Hayrenagitsner, Parev. My name is Jirair Vartkes Kasabian. I am a Dikranagertsi by ancestry. I know there's many of us here today. I serve as the chairman of the Armenian Bar Association, an international organization of lawyers, judges, professors, and law students established 30 years ago in 1989. First, I offer my sincere gratitude to the Knights of Vartan for inviting me to convey the message of the Armenian Bar Association. So I flew to the Big Apple on Thursday for our Armenian Bar Association's annual Public Servants Dinner that took place at the Yale Club in New York City. We, people who demand justice, gathered to celebrate two public servants on Thursday who uphold justice. I want to take this opportunity to once again congratulate our esteemed honorees, the Honorable Rod J. Rosenstein, an Armenian Pesa, and also the Honorable Robert H. Tembekjan for their hard work and dedication to uphold justice for the people of this great country. Let's give them a round of applause. Last Wednesday, April 24th, I stood shoulder to shoulder with our esteemed colleagues and leaders in the West Coast, where we honored and remembered our fallen compatriots of the Armenian Genocide. And today I stand shoulder to shoulder with you in the East Coast to honor our fallen. April is a month of reflection for Armenians and friends of the Armenians who were all severely and permanently affected by the mass atrocities committed as a result of the premeditated and highly organized official plan of the Ottoman Empire. Unfortunately, the genocide continues today in the form of an official denial campaign by the Republic of Turkey. And as many have asked before, who dares to deny the Jewish Holocaust? The denial campaign by the Republic of Turkey is perpetuated by the lack of criminal and civil punishments for over a century. Instead, the Republic of Turkey is given a green light to continue their denial as well as continue their campaign to eradicate all non-Turkish minorities in their region and not just in Turkey. our U.S. administration acquiesces to the gag rule of the Republic of Turkey and avoids using the word genocide. Thus, every year when given an opportunity to make a statement about the Armenian genocide, our leaders are forced to use awkward terms or even mispronounce the Metz Yeren, the great calamity, when referring to the Armenian genocide. Well, we at the Armenian Bar Association long ago dismissed this childish word game, and instead we focus on advancing the Haytad, the Armenian cause. Our projects include legal think tanks, comparative legal research, and the study of legal actions in various tribunals throughout the world. We established the Armenian Genocide Reparations Committee and the Armenian Rights Watch Committee. They offer support to major projects designed to study and enlighten the world about Armenian genocide and Armenian rights. We at the Armenian Bar Association shall not permit history to repeat itself when it comes to genocide. Rather, we work to ensure that history does repeat itself when it comes to reparations and justice. Thank you. We also look to our world leaders to urge all governments to right the wrongs of their collective pasts. We commend the leadership of nation governments that have already righted the wrongs of their past and their ongoing commitment to prevent genocide. Knowing that this work is difficult, we are highly committed to achieve justice and give a voice to our 1.5 million silenced ancestors and their descendants. Therefore, I call upon everyone, especially law students and lawyers worldwide, to support our volunteer army and achieve justice for the genocide once and for all. Baykar, Baykar, Minchev Verch. Շնորհակալություն.
Ladies and gentlemen, our students have been patiently waiting. Holy Martyrs Armenian Day School from Bayside. How many Holy Martyrs alumni do we have in the audience? Let's hear it. Since 1967, Holy Martyrs Armenian Day School has helped to raise young Armenian hearts and minds. Today, they will be singing Ask Barabans and Badani Marzikneru Yerka. They are here to pay tribute to their ancestors and to show the world that indeed Turkey failed. The students from grade 2 through 6 are accompanied by music directors Anahid Bogosyan and pianist Nivart Dadurian. Please join me in welcoming the Holy Martyrs Armenian Day School singers.
Bye.
Let's hear it again for the wonderful Holy Martyrs Armenian Day School. Hachdanak. Next, I'd like to introduce the Yerevan Dance Ensemble of the Brooklyn Armenian School, led by Aspram Zargarian. They will dance Adana by Ara Gevorkian.
During the darkest days of the Ottoman Empire, there began a tragedy of what was known as the Armenian Genocide. The people of Armenia were forced into starvation and torture. The homes were burned to the ground, as women were forced, as women were raped, and as children were bought and sold. They were accused, convicted, that because they believed in the Christ, because they believed in Jesus Christ, never again would they suffer or thirst, because God would wipe away their every single tear. Unpunished and undeterred, the ones responsible for the massacre of Adana set the stage of the Armenian Genocide. This is their story.
Thank you so much to the Yerevan Dance Ensemble of the Brooklyn Armenian School. Next, please join me in welcoming a group of students from the Ardougne School, located in New Milford, New Jersey. The Ardougne School is a coeducational day school serving students from early childhood through 8th grade. These 1st to 6th grade students have prepared a special presentation of Galigia in honor of the victims of the 1915 Armenian Genocide. The history, language, music, and culture of the Armenian people are taught to the students of the Ardougne School in many different ways that are woven into their daily lives. Please give them a very warm welcome.
While the children descend, we want to express and recognize our co-sponsors. Please join me in thanking our co-sponsors to support this event today: the Armenian General Benevolent Union, the Armenian Assembly of America, the Armenian Democratic League Ramgavar Party, the Armenian National Committee of America, the Armenian Council of America, Hunchagyan. Thank you all for being co-sponsors for the event today. We have many Armenian organizations here today. I would like to list them off: the Armenian Network of America, the Armenian Americans Study Genocide, a UN NGO organization, the Armenian Church Youth Organization of America, the Armenian Youth Federation, Armenian Relief Society, Home and Men's Scouts of New York and New Jersey, the Tekeyan Cultural Association, AGBU Young Professionals, Armenian Students Association, Hamaskayan Cultural Association of New York and New Jersey, Tri-State Armenian College and University Clubs. Thank you all. I would now like to invite Very Reverend Father Mamigon Kiledjan of the Eastern Diocese to offer the benediction and to also lead us all in Haid Med.
a message from the very Reverend Father Daniel Findikian, Primate of the Eastern Diocese of the Armenian Church of America. I convey my blessings upon all our faithful people gathered in Times Square to remember, as we do every year, the terrible crime inflicted on our people in the early years of the 20th century. We Armenians were not the first people to suffer a cruel injustice, and we would not be the last. But our experience of the genocide does put a special burden on us as a generation born of survivors. We Armenians must be more than just observers and recorders. We must summon the courage and the will as the people of God to prevent such things from happening again. We must bear witness to the truth of what happened in 1915. And no matter what happens in the world or where the future takes us, the burden of that responsibility to bear witness will not pass away. As our faith teaches, we must be the light of the world to illuminate evil whenever it hides in darkness. That was the message taught by the Lord Jesus Christ, who suffered himself, but also rose, and whose power of life over death has been made manifest in the Armenian people. Through his power, our genocide martyrs were sanctified and live as saints in God's kingdom. Through Christ's power, the light which must manifest in the lives of our martyrs and survivors is greater than the darkness of death. Let us never forget nor forsake that enduring truth. Today, I would like to convey my sincere gratitude to the members of the Knights of Vartan, who once again have brought our people together to bear witness. And as we do so here in this great city, may the world take notice that we will never forget the genocide of the Armenian people. Let us now bow our heads and pray in remembrance of the departed, as our ancestors have done for centuries before us, and as our descendants we will do until the end of the days. With prayer, the very Reverend Father Daniel Findikian, Primate of the Eastern Diocese of the Armenian Church of America, April 28, 2019. Օրհնյալ Տեր մեր Հիսուս Քրիստոս, ամեն։ Հայր մեր, որ երգինս ես, Սուրբ Եղիցի անուն քո, եկես արկայություն քո, եղիցին գամ քո, որպես երգինս և հեռի, սաց մեր անաբասոր, դուր մեզ այսօր, թող մեզ սպանիս մեր, որպես ելնենք տաղուտներ,
Զիքոյ գարություն եւ զորություն եւ փառքավիտյանս օգնյալ երեգուշնուացուկ փոքվույն երկտայգի խաղություն եւ Տեր Հիսուս Քրիստոս երեցին ցեզ թամիսյան amen. Be you blessed by the spirit of the grace of Holy Spirit. Depart in peace and the Lord be with you forever. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this event would not have been possible without the tireless efforts of the organizing committee and in particular the co-chairs, Tigran Sahakyan and Ari Menetyan, and Chairman Emeritus Hrant Gulyan. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you for all the dignitaries that attended today and our blessed clergy, people from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, your churches and your parishes. But most of all, we cannot end this without thanking New York's finest, our New York City Police Department that keeps us safe. Thank you. Thank you to the New York City Police Department. And now we ask you for us to all join together, along with the Astrigner singers, to sing God Bless America. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to spend this day with us. We will see you all next year. This concludes our program. God bless America. God bless Armenia.